ONGATET TV, source of knowledge.
Chitap Kalenjin atajin eng logoiwek kebunu ematunwekab sang kongetege ONGATET TV nesomanwa kwane Jepkwe Safina angetaune logoiwek eng nwagindo. Koek boiboiyet eng emet notok nebo America yekangenyorchi lelutik somok neki ofisayatab police Derek Chauvin. Kageyat sugulishek eng emetab Argentina kosubkei ak ngatutiet nekobun kapkirwok. Bune uitunwek biik chesire 10,000 tikiiti kabokyinet nebo Islamic State eng emet notok nebo Mozambique. Itagat eng logoiwek tugul. Kitaune logoiwek chotok chebunu nganasetab Palma eng murot katam notok nebo emetab Mozambique ole maregune 11,000 kaitetab biik chekimweiso eng arawet nekosirto kosubkei ak kabokyinetab bunyondit. Kamwa kibagengeit notok netononjin imandab kipkosobe kole chang biik chechenge tilyanutik kwak eng komasta notok nebo Pemba ki nekoyai kwa barak sobet mising eng biik chotok chememuchigei.
I grabbed my children and we started running. My husband was at work on the other side of town. I haven't heard from him since March and his phone is switched off.
We share the little we have with each other. I am the only one working. If I can find food to bring home, I try to do just that. Sometimes we have nothing to eat at all. Sometimes we eat one meal once a day.
This is a crisis to which the world needs to pay attention. This is a crisis that desperately needs for us as humanitarians more funding. We've got a lot more to do here. We've got rising needs. And while there are many competing crises around the world, it is vital that this one gets attention. These people have been through so much. They've been through conflict, they've been through cyclones, and they have urgent needs that we have to help them meet.
Yegisege eng emet notok nebo Africa kebendi agoi emet notok nebo America nekangalal kandoindet neo Joe Biden yekangenyorchi lelutik kapkirwok nebo Minneapolis neki ofisayatab police Derek Chauvin nekibete sobet George Floyd eng kenyit nekosirtoi. Kamwa Joe Biden kole ngandan unotok komayame kargonget notok nekakikochi Derek kosubkei ak rumishet nekiyai inendet.
A jury in Minnesota found former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin guilty on all counts in the murder of George Floyd last May. It was a murder in the full light of day, and it ripped the blinders off for the whole world to see. The systemic racism the Vice President just referred to. The systemic racism is a stain on our nation's soul. The knee on the neck of justice for Black Americans. Profound fear and trauma. The pain, the exhaustion that Black and brown Americans experience every single day. The murder of George Floyd launched a summer of protest we hadn't seen since the civil rights era in the 60s. Protests that unified people of every race and generation in peace and with purpose to say enough, enough, enough of this senseless killings. Today's verdict is a step forward. I just spoke with the governor of Minnesota, who thanked me for the close work with his team. I also spoke with George Floyd's family again. A remarkable family of extraordinary courage. Nothing can ever bring their brother, their father back. But this can be a giant step forward in the march toward justice in America. Let's also be clear that such a verdict is also much too rare. For so many people, it seems like it took a unique and extraordinary convergence of factors. A brave young woman with a smartphone camera, a crowd that was traumatized witnesses, a murder that lasts almost 10 minutes in broad daylight for ultimately the whole world to see. Officers standing up and testifying against a fellow officer instead of just closing ranks, which should be commended. A jury who heard the evidence, carried out their civic duty in the midst of an extraordinary moment, under extraordinary pressure. For so many, it feels like it took all of that for the judicial system to deliver a just basic accountability. We saw how traumatic and exhausting just watching the trial was for so many people. Think about it, those of you who are listening. Think about how traumatic it was for you. You weren't there. You didn't know any of the people. But it was difficult, especially for the witnesses who had to relive that day. It's a trauma. On top of the fear so many people of color live with every day.
Akot kounotok kaboibochi biikab boror kakwaut notok nekaib kapkirwok eng Derek Chauvin neki ofisaetab police nemwaat kole kiibete inendet sobet George Floyd.
We have justice! This is the first step! We are not finished! This is the first step for our black community!
We are satisfied with just this. This is just one step to it.
I'm so glad that he got justice. It's been way too long. And I'm glad we're out here today because I'm sorry, I want to cry, but I can't. I'm sorry.
Non-believers for the last 5 years, they came out into the streets for what was right, and they got a victory.
Kageat sugulishek eng emet notok nebo Argentina yekangokon tilet kapkirwok koesio ng'atutietab serikali nebo kosomane lagok eng oretab muswoknotetab kasari anan ko online classes. Letaetabkei nebo miondo notok nebo corona eng kanaset notok nebo Buenos kokakon arogenet eng kwenutab kandoik chebo nganasanatak, kanetik ak sigik.
This country has poverty rates of 42% and over 50% of the children have no computer or internet. So I'm here for the children who do not have access to education, because education is the only thing that will change this country.
Sabemos que la pandemia sigue circulando.
We know the pandemic continues, the virus circulates, but we cannot choose between education and health. The challenge is to find the common good and to learn how to live with this and do it with care and responsibility. Parents and teachers are respecting the protocols.
At the beginning of the pandemic, when the president was like a protective father, public opinion took care of him and supported him. He had a 68% approval rating. But now he's dropped over 40 points because he's disconnected from the problems people are facing every day, aside from the pandemic.
Kitakinige emet notok nebo Palestine ole tetei kwai lewenishet nebo serikalitab kibagenge nekata serikalishek aeng chetononjin West Bank ak Gaza Strip. Iku kasarta netai kongetege kenyishek 15 chekikosirto yekingoyai lewenishet emet notok nebo Palestine.
15 years without an election, and we're facing a miserable situation. As a mother, I wish it will happen and things change for the better.
These elections are only for renewing the legitimacy of Palestinian leaders and to continue to rely on foreign aid. But in the long term, it will not serve the Palestinian people.
Maybe after the elections we might see a new or different kind of coalitions, but that will probably be against the will of the international community, which is still classifying Hamas as a terrorist organization, and also Israel, which doesn't want to see Hamas in any form of a Palestinian government. So a united or a unified government between Hamas and Fatah is unlikely.
The world and the international community should help us choose our leader and to take our rights back. We should be living in a good situation like all the human beings in this region.
Kitarchini logoiwek chok emet notok nebo Yemen ole tesetai kobounegei nganaset notok nebo Marib kiboriotinik chebo kibagengeit notok nebo Houthi eng emet notok nebo Yemen. Mwae logoiwek kole kiboriotinik chotok kotieme koreb ketesiet notok nebo mwanik nekoyai kobit chemarget eng kwenunywa ak ofisaek ab luget.
My husband lost his mind because of the war. He keeps beating the children and cursing us. I have a 13-year-old girl who was abused until she became like her father and now does the same things her father does, all because of this war.
The Houthi strategy is to push weak fighters forwards, to exhaust the opponent. They send children and fighters with little experience, who we find either dead or we arrest.
Tagastandenyu kaketar logoiwek chotok chebunu emotinwekab sang nekasomonwa kwane Jepkoe Safina ak amokoun kembout nemie.